Hi everyone. Welcome to this channel. And in this video, this is actually a very special video. A lot of people want to learn Kubernetes, right? And they don't have the basics to learn Kubernetes. And that is one big challenge many people are experiencing. And there are many YouTube videos that actually help you learn Kubernetes, and they tell you what are the prerequisites that you must learn first before you learn Kubernetes, but not in a very ordered way, rather than you will get the information what you should know before learning Kubernetes, but you don't know how all those things connect each other and what are the step-by-step instructions or step-by-step learning process to reach Kubernetes, right? I mean, so that's why we talk about 6 steps, and these 6 steps together would actually you can take the steps one after other, starting from step 1 to learn Kubernetes. So that's exactly what we are going to discuss in this video. And if you have not subscribed to this particular channel yet, please go ahead and subscribe, and also turn on the notification so that you would be notified every time a new video is produced. And my name is Basil, and I'm part of DevOps Store, and I am also a Udemy instructor. I provide create different Udemy courses, and you can find all those things on Udemy. Okay. So without any further introduction, let's get started. So the first thing that you must learn is Linux. And actually, in this video, I am putting down the bare minimum things that you must learn. So I won't tell you to become an expert in Linux. I won't tell you to become an expert in software applications. I would tell you what are those essential pieces that you must know before you go to your next step. And all the way until we reach the step 6, that's where we learn Kubernetes in detail. So let's get started. So first, you should have a basic understanding about Linux. You don't need to be a Linux expert, but rather you should be comfortable with the Linux command line. You need to understand how to operate a file system on Linux using different Linux commands. And you can also try to use Linux command line, try to get comfortable on Linux. And if you want to create your first Linux machine, if you do not have a Linux environment within your laptop, you can go ahead and create a Linux virtual machine in the cloud. You can go ahead and select any Linux distribution. It could be Ubuntu, it could be CentOS, it could be anything. You can get started with Linux. You just attempt bare minimum 2 things. If you want to learn Linux more, there are thousands of materials available on YouTube. You can refer them and learn them, but you don't have to be a Linux expert to become an expert in Kubernetes. That's the truth. So our objective is to learn Kubernetes from scratch. So just try to get yourself comfortable with the Linux file system. Try to learn some commands that operate the file system and work on the file system. And then probably you should also try to learn some software installations. How do you install software applications into a Linux VM? How do you do it in Windows? Similar knowledge you need to have on Linux. There are different command line tools available on Linux that would help you do that. So get yourself familiar with Linux. I would say take 1 or 2 days, get yourself comfortable with the Linux command line. And as you work more on Linux, you would become more and more comfortable later. So I don't need you to spend a lot of time understanding Linux. Just get with the basics, and then go ahead and move on to the next step. You need hardly 2 or 3 days to get comfortable with Linux, or at least get the basic command line interface knowledge. 2 to 3 days are sufficient. And once you are comfortable with Linux command line, move on to the software application. Right? Try to understand what is a software applications and how do we begin developing a software application. Or you don't need to understand the coding, you need to understand the software application, the structure of the software application. Most of the software application consists of the code, which is typically developed by the developers, and you don't have to worry about the code of the software application, but try to understand what the code does, what exactly that particular software application that you are experimenting, what it does, and how, if one want to run this software application on a Linux machine, maybe in the AWS cloud or any Linux machine, what are the steps they should take to run this application in the Linux machine. I mean, just try to understand theoretically, not into the practical, but yes, you need practice. That is also another step, which I will discuss later. But for now, just try to take some application you can search in GitHub. You will get a lot of demo beginner friendly application that helps you understand the software structure. Typically, every software will have the code, every software will have the dependency. And yes, it's something that you need to understand how exactly the dependencies of the softwares are managed, right? If it is a React application, it could be a package.json file. If it is a Java application, it could be a pom.xml file. Typically, developer manage the list of dependencies in a single file, which you can just try to understand a little bit. Go to GitHub, search for some free beginner friendly React project, Python project, or Java project, or any technology. It doesn't have to be these three. It could be any technology. Take a project and understand the structure of it, the code, the dependency management. Then how, if someone want to build and deploy this project in the cloud, what are the steps they need to take, right? Just try to understand some basic, not into an expert level. I would say take more than one technology. Don't just take npm, or don't just take React. You also take a Python application, or maybe another Java application. More than one application. You just try to understand their structure and try to get help from a senior or a colleague if required. And once you have a theoretical understanding about these applications, and once you went through those applications from GitHub, now you can move on to the next step about network communication. So a lot of people assume that you must be a network expert if you want to learn Kubernetes. That is not true. That is definitely not true. You need to understand how the basic networking works, how exactly different software applications talk to each other through a network. And yes, here you might need to try yourself some application. Maybe take one software application from GitHub and run it on a Linux machine in the cloud. Take another software application, run it in a different Linux machine in the same cloud, then configure communication between these two applications. Maybe the first application can send a hello, and the second application can respond with a hello back, right? Find a similar symbol applications on GitHub. You can simply search in GitHub and find maybe two application communication establishment, right? So try to understand that. Then also try to understand the basic concept of networking. What is an IP address, and how the servers or computers speak to each other using the IP address. Just try to understand the very core basics of networking. I believe that should be sufficient from the networking perspective. And then you can now get into the most important topic, that would be building and developing software applications hands-on. Yes, you need a lot of hands-on if you plan to learn Kubernetes. It's the truth, right? So basically, you can take the same application that you found on GitHub. Let's say take a React application, then take a Flask or Python-based application, take a Java or Spring-based application, and try to build and deploy this application maybe on an AWS VM. You can use more than one computer to deploy this application. I mean, for that, you can search in GitHub for microservice demo, or you can simply search in Google microservice demo on GitHub. That would give you a lot of microservice based application. The advantage is that there would be more than one software applications, and they would have proper documentation about how these software applications speaks to each other once you deployed them on a computer. So basically, this is something that you should practice. So take a React application, Python application, Java application, Go application, anything. Take more than one application, build them into some executable file, deploy them into the cloud. So this would actually chat would actually give you a brief understanding about what is expected of you. And once you learn how to deploy more than one application in the cloud, try to also learn how to configure them to talk to each other, right? This is also something important. So there some networking concept would also come in, the important concept that you need to know before we deploy the application. So before we get into Kubernetes, I would say And now the fifth step. Okay, before we go to the fifth step, now I would want to talk about my Udemy course on containers and Kubernetes from scratch. Actually, this is a course I built for absolute beginners who would want to learn Kubernetes from scratch. So this course actually, now you can either follow these practices, what I am talking about in this video, all by yourself, or you can simply take this course, because this course not only teach you Kubernetes, but also everything that you need to know before you learn Kubernetes, right? So just a suggestion, I would be pasting this course link in the description of this YouTube video. And if you are interested, you can go ahead and subscribe to that course and you can take this course. And there's an offer. This course is currently available at $4.99, and the link below would redirect you to the course page with that discounted price. Now, if you come down further, the next step that you want to do, the fifth step, would be you want to convert these applications into containers. So let's assume you have a microservice application. One application can act as a front-end application. The other application can act as a backend or probably a proxy that would send the message to a third application, which could be a Java-based application. And these three applications, you have the ability to run separately on separate server and everything. Now it's time that you try to understand how containers work. It is a very, very important learning to do. You need to have a clear understanding about how container work if you want to learn Kubernetes. Very, very important. You need to, the advantage with container is that you can put any technology into a container. It could be your Java application, it could be a React application or Python application. You can put those technologies in a container, something like a box, and then you can run it on a host machine as plug and play. You just tell the host machine that create this container, and it get created with everything your software need inside that container. So build and deployment, everything would become very comfortable, convenient, and later when you learn Kubernetes, the underlying technology is containers. Kubernetes is used for orchestrating these containers. So understanding the container, how they work, how do you, if you have a software technology, how do you build this into a container image? How do you store all these container image in a central repository? How do you deploy them into a production environment or a dev environment? I mean, this is something that you need to understand very, very clearly. And you should also try to understand what are the container advantages that you get when you use containers. So you should learn containers in detail. Maybe you can use Docker, Postman. There are different container technologies available, and it doesn't matter which technology you learn in depth. It's important that you learn containers in depth before you start with Kubernetes. This is a mistake many people make. They try to learn Kubernetes without have a full understanding on containers, right? So make sure that you go through the containers and also try to learn Linux process. That's important. Before you learn containers, try to learn how a Linux process works, something that I did not include. Maybe I would write it down right here for your information, and I would be sharing this as a PDF, and I would be putting the PDF link in the below description of this video. So try to understand Linux process, right? Linux process before learning containers, something that I missed to put. So something you learn now to understand Linux process before you learn containers, and try to do all these things with containers. I have listed down what you are supposed to do. And then finally, once you are comfortable, once you know how container work, how to build your application to container, how to store them in a registry, how to deploy them on a computer, now you are ready to go on to Kubernetes, right? Kubernetes comes as the tool to orchestrate the container, run these containers in production, ensuring high availability, scalability, fault tolerance, disaster recovery, or whatever production complicated problem that one is experiencing. Kubernetes has a solution, either a native solution or a plugged-in solution. So Kubernetes is a much bigger tool that can help you with a lot of things, So that is our 6 steps we are going to learn Kubernetes. You can create Kubernetes clusters either locally using tools such as K3D or Kind, or you can create a Kubernetes cluster in the cloud, which is what I would recommend. There are different cloud computing providers today who provide you the free trial. So without incurring any cost, today you can actually run your Kubernetes cluster in the cloud. And that is how companies are using, most of the companies are using to manage their production environment. So when you learn Kubernetes, learn the cloud capabilities of Kubernetes as well. That is a good thing to have. So that is why rather than using a local Kubernetes cluster, I strongly suggest you to get a Kubernetes cluster from the cloud. Could be Google Cloud, could be AWS, and use that free trial to make sure that you don't incur any charges because you are just exploring things. I don't think learning should be costly. So yeah, use it smartly. I would leave that to you. So when you try to learn Kubernetes, those applications that you previously containerized, this time you try to learn to deploy them in Kubernetes. And there are a few things that you should understand. You should make sure that your applications, once it's deployed into Kubernetes, you don't deploy one instance, you deploy multiple instances of your application. So even if one fail, your customer won't notice it, or the people who uses your application, they can still continue to use it because there are other instances that are healthily serving your application to them. Similarly, you want to have automatic failover. If a instance of your application crashes, it should automatically recover from the failure. And you need to make sure that when you run your applications in a production Kubernetes cluster, you maintain all these practices, make sure that your application is more reliable and fault tolerant. So these are the things that you can try when it comes to deploying containers into Kubernetes. And just, I have written down all the steps in detail. I would put them together inside a PDF, and I would also be sharing with you. And you can see this PDF in the comment below. And finally, that's pretty much, we are done with it. And if you would like to learn Kubernetes through my Udemy course, you can actually do that. I would also be putting the Udemy course link in the description below, and you would also get a coupon that would make this course available at a very cheap price, right? So this is pretty much. And also, if you have not subscribed into this YouTube channel, I strongly suggest you to subscribe and also turn on the radio notification so that whenever I upload a new video, it would be available to you. So happy learning Kubernetes from absolute beginner level. And this whole process, actually, if you spend 2 to 3 hours per day, I would say you can complete Kubernetes learning in about 2 weeks time. I mean, that's what right, when I used to take live training of these topics to my students, that's what I used to tell them. 2 weeks is sufficient. Don't try to overlearn the things that you don't necessarily need, right? I mean, basically, a lot of YouTube videos suggest that you need to be an expert in Linux. You should know networking. You should know software application, build, deployment, containers stuff, and they give you a list, and people end up going through that list, try to learn each and everything, and without ability to connect them each other, right? So basically, this is the streamlined way. These 6 steps would actually help you learn Kubernetes in a streamlined way, save a lot of time to learn Kubernetes, right? So again, thank you everyone very much, and I hope you would start your Kubernetes learning today.